Welcome. I'm Alva, folks, a doctor of natural medicine and a spiritual advisor. Holistic health care is becoming even more important as we're absorbing more chemicals and less nutrition in our food supply. My guest has a busy practice in Toronto where he teaches his clients to utilize natural therapeutics and the holistic concepts of mind, body, and spirit in order to achieve and maintain good health. Welcome, Darko.
Thank you so much, Alva.
It's a pleasure to have you back again. So our topic tonight is natural medicine, but specifically we're going to deal with the thyroid.
Absolutely.
Epidemic?
It is seeming so, yes.
So when I deal with clients, I would say to you that 7 out of 10 walking in my office have a thyroid issue. What do you average?
I think that's about right.
Yeah. Okay, what are some of the issues that cause the thyroid not to work?
Oh, there's a long list of issues. Unfortunately, in today's world, we have a lot of chemicals that are environmentally sensitive to the thyroid gland. The fluoride, for example, that we utilize in our water has an affinity for the thyroid, and it interferes with thyroid hormone production. Radiation is a very, very big issue. We've known through disasters like Chernobyl in the past where their citizens were given potassium iodine tablets to protect the thyroid from radiation. And today, as you well know, we had a nuclear disaster last year in Japan with Fukushima, which had a very big impact all over the world, and it's starting to reach the shores of North America now.
Mm-hmm. One of the issues I am aware of, because I have it, is the silver fillings in my teeth.
Yes.
And it caused me tremendous issues. So yes, that's another issue.
Absolutely.
The dentists don't always want to recognize it, but it's there. Okay. What are some of the other issues, Darko?
Well, we don't have the nutrients, unfortunately. We've known as far back as 1930s where we had an epidemic of goiters, which means it's the enlargement of the thyroid gland because it's trying to grow to trap more blood to try to find its nutrient, which was iodine. The government, in response to this epidemic, iodized our salt. And we've been following that practice to date. But unfortunately, today we're missing other minerals. Vitamin D, zinc, selenium, for example, are all needed for healthy thyroid function. And we'll get into a few of those as we go along. Okay,
wonderful. Okay. So there's a lot of issues that happen. Well, another big one is stress, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
That today, no matter who you are, no matter what job you have, there's always stress related. Because our society is a rush, and we're going to have a lot more issues in the near future, I feel.
Well, if the amount of smartphones out there is any indication, everybody's always looking down and keying away, so I don't think that we take the time out to breathe anymore, and you're absolutely right. Stress is a major contributing factor. There's an item called reverse T3, which actually inhibits T4 to T3 conversion, which is the active form of thyroid hormone. So even if you had all the nutrients for your thyroid, chronic stress, hypercortisolism, which is a stress hormone, can lead to increases in this reverse T3, which keeps us from converting to the active T3 hormone.
Wow. Okay. And I think, you know, we're going to go into the endocrine system in a little bit here, but one of the things that I discovered, because even my daughter had this issue, was when your thyroid doesn't work, your endocrine system is in trouble.
Absolutely.
And so more and more women are having trouble getting pregnant, holding on to the pregnancy, and in delivery, because your endocrine system is all tied into the thyroid, isn't it?
Yes, clinically speaking, actually, there's a larger amount of stillbirths with hypothyroidism mother, and infertility, a heavy menstruation, inability to conceive, inability to carry to full term. Those are just some of the things that are involved. And yes, I like the way you mentioned that, the whole endocrine system, because so many of individuals out there might think, well, it's just my thyroid. Well, it can't just be your thyroid. It's the holistic view. It's dependent on the other organs. For example, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, the thyroid, the adrenal. They're very intricate.
Right. And when we start talking about the endocrine system, we're also talking about our immune system.
Yes, we are.
Bingo.
Yes,
and that's a big problem for a lot of people today.
Yes, we are, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So where would you like to start with this?
Well, I think first and foremost, I think it's important for individuals to understand what the endocrine system is.
Okay.
And I don't know if we have an image that we can maybe project.
Can we show that first image?
That way the people at home might have a little bit better understanding.
Okay, there.
Well, this is basically how we catch diseases, and it starts off at the top and it talks about depleted soils, and it poor nutrient content and how it affects the cells of the body, and that leads to symptoms of dysfunction, and eventually we get to the doctor, and the doctor gives us the ceremonial naming of the disease, and he writes a little script real quick, and levothyroxine and Synthroid is the indicator here, and that's basically T4. But eventually, the thyroid can no longer be placated symptomatically with these T4 medications.
Right.
We haven't looked at the root cause. And once we look at the root cause, then we can actually start restoring thyroid function and endocrine function, which every single cell in the body is dependent upon it, including your thyroid, your hypothalamus, your pituitary, your adrenals, and so on.
Right. Okay. Can we have that next picture up there, Sal, please? Okay. And this is our endocrine system. So explain a little bit about our endocrine system and how it works, Darko. I always like to educate my viewers because I know I get so many emails saying, thank you, I didn't understand. Thank you, I didn't understand. So explain how it works.
Okay, well, it's quite simple, really. It's a complicated body you can see on the screen here. And starting right at the top in the brain on the right side, it's hypothalamus. It's the master regulator in the body. The next step is the pituitary just to the left. He releases hormones that tells the thyroid situated in our neck what to do. And as you can see, there's many other glands in there. Down in the chest, there's the thymus gland, very important for the maturation of white blood cells to keep us healthy. Beneath that, just over the kidneys in the center, our adrenal glands, our stress glands, and boy, are we in trouble there.
Right, because that's the backup, isn't it?
Oh my, yes.
Okay.
And they're constantly on.
Right.
The pancreas, of course, we know diabetes and other blood sugar regulating problems. And we have the ovaries down on the right side, and for the men, the testes. So the entire endocrine system is dependent. And for example, if your thyroid gland isn't functioning, in females, the ovaries won't ovulate, and your menstrual cycle might be too long, might be too short, you might lose it altogether. For men, fertility problems, low libido, low sperm counts, inability to conceive as well. So there is not one cell in the body that isn't affected by this thyroid. In fact, it's kind of like your thermostat. If you set your thermostat at 25 degrees, your whole house is at 25 degrees. If you set your thyroid at 97.6 degrees Fahrenheit, every single cell will be running optimally. And there's an easy way, and we'll tell you about it later, how we can test this at home with something as simple as a thermometer.
Okay, I like this one. Okay, so one of the things I find interesting, and I'm sure you're running into this, and I just want to, again, I like to educate the viewers, okay? So when people are totally overstressed, their adrenals become overstressed, and then we have adrenal burnout.
Yes, we do.
So that's another big issue we run into when the thyroid's not working, right?
Maybe we can do that in the next show.
Okay. Okay, so where are we going to go next then?
Well, I think the important part, and if we can put up that next shot there, we'll
Okay.
talk about the negative feedback loop.
Right, okay.
And it's another little image that people might be able to follow along at home with.
Okay, can we have our, there we go.
There we are.
Okay.
And you see there's a cross-section of the brain, and it shows how from the top on the left side, the hypothalamus tells the pituitary through a series of hormone stimulators, TRH at the top, thyrotropic hormone, down to the pituitary, thyroid stimulating hormone, and finally down at the bottom, the thyroid, T3 and T4. And through negative feedback, almost like a thermostat, once your house comes to the proper temperature, it turns itself off. It no longer heats or cools. It's received the desired temperature. And our endocrine systems have become so dysfunctional in today's world because of the multitude of chemicals that we've been exposed to over the past 50 years, that they're just not functioning properly. And I find a lot of success in everything from elevated cholesterol to miscarriages to libido. I see an epidemic of women who are suffering from weight problems.
Yes.
And hair loss.
Yes.
A lot of hair loss.
I'm seeing a lot of that as well.
Yes, and many women are surprised to find out that it's their thyroid. They're wearing socks to bed. They're constantly complaining that they're cold. It's never warm enough. Their libido's down. Their skin is dry. Their hair is falling. And they say, I feel like I'm falling apart. And we give them the proper nutrients. And there's things like L-tyrosine and amino acid and iodine and zinc and selenium and some other homeopathic remedies that we utilize in conjunction to balance and to strengthen the whole of the endocrine system, and specifically the thyroid. And once that happens, their health slowly starts coming back, and they're obviously quite delighted when their hair stops falling out.
Well, I knew about the weight problem. That was one of the telltale signs for me that I was having an issue. Okay. I see we've got one caller on the line here. We have Tammy from Bowmanville. Hi, Tammy. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. What would you like to ask Darko, honey?
Well, I had surgery in January, and I just feel drained still.
What surgery was on, was it the thyroid?
No, I had a brain tumor removed.
A brain tumor removed. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's obviously a very serious condition. A brain tumor is usually the end of the cellular organism, meaning that it took many, many years for it to develop, and now it's time for you to start to replenish yourself with the right nutrients. I think juicing is a fabulous way to get your nutrients into your body, and right now we have a really wonderful time of year. If you don't have a garden, which would be optimal, the farmer's market, to get fresh organic produce and to juice it as freshly as possible, because we come from the soil. The nutrients that we require come from the soil, and if we get those nutrients from the soil as quickly as possible into our bodies, it's like charging your battery up. And of course, the right vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, antioxidants, and whatever else might be missing.
One of the big issues we have is that our regular regular crops are genetically modified. So you want organic, because there's only 50 to 60% of the nutrition in the foods. So for you to get optimum health, go to the farmer's market and get some organic and start juicing. Okay, dear?
Okay, thank you.
All right. What they're telling me is that within 1 year, you'll be back on track.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Thanks for calling in.
Thanks.
Okay. My guest tonight is Darko. We're talking about the thyroid and how it affects the endocrine system. And we invite you to call in. Is your thyroid working? Call in and talk to us. And we'll share some more insights how you can help yourself out. And we're going to go to commercial break, and we'll be right back. So join us right after this commercial break as we share some more information on the endocrine system and your thyroid. Welcome back. My guest is Darko, and he has a flourishing practice in Toronto. So if you have any major health issues, although we're talking about the endocrine system, this is the man to call. Okay, this is the man to call. We're talking about how the thyroid has an issue. It affects the endocrine system, and we want to get behind some of the causes. A lot of people are becoming more aware. Okay, they're more interested in health. They want to know how to change their lifestyle in order to make things better. But what are a lot of the major causes, okay?
Well, we've touched base a little bit about nutritional deficiencies and chronic stress and reverse T3, and there's also poor liver function. Our liver actually converts T4 to T3, so if our liver isn't functioning well, we can't get the active hormone and our cells just won't function properly. Bowel toxins, we've known well over 100 years, some of the major surgeons in the past. One was Sir Buthnot Lane. He was a physician to the British royal family. He cut out diseased parts of the bowel, and toxic thyroid symptoms went away, and they started putting the connection together. And there's many different environmental toxins that are going to be found to inhibit thyroid function. For example, PCBs, they're called polychlorinated biphenyls, big long word. We've tried to ban these, but unfortunately they have a half-life of thousands of years and they don't break down very readily, so they're still in our environment.
But aren't they still in plastic bottles?
Yes, unfortunately.
Hello, viewers,
yes, absolutely.
plastic bottles.
Yes, absolutely. That's
Okay.
one of the other things that we're going to talk about. They're called phthalates, and this is what makes our plastics soft. Plastics, there's hard plastics and soft plastics. They're called phthalates. We find them in all types of consumer products today. Everything is in plastic today, so we're constantly being exposed to that. Back in the 80s, women used to give their babies milk formula in the plastic bottles with the plastic sleeve, and they would microwave them. Yeah.
Guilty. No, I didn't microwave.
Well,
Guilty.
So we have so many of these things that we weren't aware of. And of course, when we're not aware of it, it's somehow okay. But
Right.
now that we do know, we shouldn't. Another thing, for example, there's something called triclosan. It's in antibacterial soaps.
Right.
These chemicals absorb in through our skin and affect thyroid function. There is industrial chemicals like nonstick cookware, our little
Flipper?
yeah, the flipper thing there. The spatulas, they're made out of plastic. If you've noticed, most of us have them and they're somewhat melted.
Right.
Well, where did the plastic go?
That's one I didn't think about.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So between the pan that has the Teflon on it and the plastic spatula, and I believe everybody has that spatula in their cupboard at home, there's also something called bisphenol A, which recently we've banned. And it wasn't so many years ago that we were actually buying hard plastics because we knew that the soft plastics were dangerous, and then new information came along, exposed bisphenol A as being an endocrine disruptor. There was young women who were going into puberty earlier. There was young men who weren't developing properly in puberty. A whole host of infertility problems, male and female alike, and now we banned bisphenol A.
Right.
And what was ironic is there was a plastic bottle that there was on the market for a while, and I purchased that plastic thinking it was safer, and 2 weeks later, as luck would have it, I find out that it's toxic, and I said, well, there you go. And I'm right back to stainless steel and glass as I used to use before, but you know, it's a convenience factor.
Right.
Some of the other things people might not be aware of is fluoride.
Oh.
Fluoride has been used for about 30, 40 years, unfortunately. Some of the newer clinical evidence that's been coming forth recently has been showing that it doesn't actually prevent tooth decay. The incidence of dental caries is increasing. It doesn't reduce osteoporosis. It actually makes your bones more fragile, almost like crystal. It's hard, but if you hit it, it crumbles very easily. So this is why we haven't seen a decrease in osteoporosis, and we find this in everything from dental visits to we have, of course, when our toothpaste, we're told that fluoride is beneficial for us, but again, the other thing is in the water. And it'd be really well advised for the people at home to consider getting a filtration system that would take that fluoride out as well.
And I wonder if our viewers are aware that fluoride is actually a waste product in factories.
Well, you know, when I first read about it, that in the 1960s, Metro City Council voted on adding it to our water, and I thought to myself as I was reading these studies, what information was Metro City Council going on when they added it to our municipal water supply? So that's our water. Another real culprit in improper thyroid function is radiation, and people say, well, I don't have any radiation around me. We mentioned earlier
Dental x-rays?
Dental x-rays, and you know, sometimes they're necessary.
Right.
But use it only when necessary. Another is from medical procedures, CT scans, computerized tomography. We're giving too many CT scans. We could use more non-invasive ultrasounds, for example, MRIs, and use CT scans as a last resort, because exposing the full body to a full body CT scan gives you a huge amount of radiation that was almost equal with Chernobyl. And actually, there was a book written, Death by Modern Medicine, by Dr. Carolyn Dean, which quotes that.
Yes.
And they go on to say that even the radiologists weren't fully aware of the dangers, and up to 75% of new cancers are from these medical procedures.
Okay, so when we're talking about that, how about people that travel a lot?
Well, unfortunately, you know, there's another culprit. There's not much we can do about that. You know, the airport
there
security.
There are devices, though, that set up a biofield.
Yes.
So that when you have these things, you're not taking on what you were taking on before.
Yeah,
so there are some of those apparatus out there, and people need to be aware of that as well.
Yeah, I think that for the most part, people would be wise to go to their neighborhood health food stores, because this is the hub of all the most recent information. These are the pioneers, if you will, who bring new products to market. They're constantly providing their community with the information necessary to keep themselves well.
Right, right. I totally agree with you. Okay, I see we've got a couple of callers on the line. Let's see if we're going to talk about the endocrine system tonight.
Sure.
We have Nancy from Newcastle. Hi, Nancy. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. Hi, Alva.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
What would you like to
I
ask?
was just listening to your guests there, and he had said something about the fluoride, and it was kind of funny because all my babies were born in Florida, and at the time, in the 70s and 80s, I thought it was kind of funny that they didn't have any fluoride in their water, so we had to supplement that. In fact, I thought it was kind of archaic because here in Ontario, we have fluoride in the water, you know. So that's just something to think about. And also, no, I don't have any thyroid function, but it wasn't to do with any diet or anything. It was just I hemorrhaged after my second baby in 1979.
Ah, okay. It's interesting. My favorite book is The Fluoride Deception.
Yes, it's a great book. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, that was my favorite book, yeah. Well, are you taking some medication for it now, Nancy?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're doing fine?
Yeah, I'm doing good.
Good,
Yep.
good. Well, thank you for calling in and sharing.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay,
Take
take care. All right. Next, we have Donna from Oshawa. Hi, Donna. How are you tonight?
Oh, great. How are you?
Good. What would you like to ask Darko, dear?
Well, I had a back injury a couple of years, 5 years ago, and I've put on so much weight, about 50 pounds, because I can't, it's chronic pain. I can't get around enough. And yet I don't have that much of an appetite because of the pain medication.
Right.
So
Okay.
I can't understand why I'm just blowing up.
Well, maybe Darko's got some answers.
Well, there could be a whole host of issues that are here, but first and foremost, if it's the pain medications that are causing the lack of appetite, which is leading to the
weight gain,
I think that we should look to the root cause and try to, 5 years ago was long enough for the body to heal. The question is she receiving the right nutrients to heal?
Right.
So, for example, if she has a back problem, if it's a vertebrae problem, a slipped disc, if it's perhaps neurological, you have to find out what's at the root cause and then provide the right nutrients. So, for example, if she was to have a slipped disc, for example, I would provide the right nutrients for rebuilding of collagen. And collagen and mucopolysaccharides is a big long word, which is basically what our connective tissue is made up of. And specifically, there's amino acids, lysine, proline, vitamin C, and this is kind of like the knitting of collagen. Minerals like manganese, there's nutrients out there, glucosamine, chondroitin, quite popular for joint rebuilding. Nutrients such as MSM in therapeutic dosages to help regenerate that tissue. So there's a whole host of ingredients, and it's kind of like baking a cake. You have to have the right amount of flour, eggs, water, baking soda, and sugar.
And what a lot of people don't realize is that there's 70 side effects to almost every prescription you're taking.
Yes.
So unfortunately, what the allopathic doctor says is giving you one, and it's masking. It's not going to the source, like you said. So we always have to go back, and we have to go back to the beginning in order to heal. So sometimes you need to have it clarified where you want to go and how you want to get there. And a lot of our MDs have so many patients that they really don't have the time to really focus on what we need sometimes. So we have to do our own research, don't we?
Absolutely, yeah. They're a little bit overwhelmed, and what I would do is I would try to find myself a good healthcare team first and foremost.
Right.
You need a good doctor, of course, a good family doctor who knows your history. I would try to find a natural healthcare provider to work together with the doctor. So if the doctor can stabilize you in the short term with the medication, with your symptoms, we can work on the underlying causes, try to get you stronger. So in the short term, we have relief. Long term, we have you repaired. Right.
Yeah. So I hope that helped out a little bit, Donna. Okay, so let's go back to some of the other things that we need to be aware of in order to start healing ourselves. When we have thyroid issues, what should we start being aware of? Where should we go? What should we be doing in order to start repairing what's going on? Where do you suggest we start?
Well, the first thing that you should do is go see a qualified healthcare practitioner who can sit down, look at your primary concerns, your contributing factor, your family history. I think today we're all looking for the quick fix. We need to know the history of the vehicle, if you will. And we need to know how your childhood was, what kind of diseases you were through, to give us a better idea of how the body is responding as a whole. And because the thyroid issue is not the disease, it's the symptom.
Right.
We want to know what's at the root cause. As we mentioned earlier, we can go to the doctor. He can give us a script for T4, synthroid, levothyroxine, and that will help manage our symptoms. And we do blood work, and he says, well, everything seems to be in order. Well, it's only in order for as long as you take that medication. You take that medication away, everything falls through.
Right.
I think the wiser approach is to use the medication in the short term and find out what's missing. So is it toxicity to the thyroid? Is it nutritional deficiencies? Is it environmental chemicals? Is it an amino acid deficiency? Is the liver not able to convert T4 to T3? Is it chronic stress with elevated cortisol levels that cause a reverse T3 to inhibit the T4 to T3 function? There's so many different biochemical pathways, and as always, very important to know what you're doing. That way you can be ensured a successful treatment.
Okay. My guest is Darko. We're talking about the endocrine system and how it's affected by the thyroid and some of the things we can do to identify it, to get some help, find a practitioner. And when we come back from this, we're going to have some more information on the endocrine and the thyroid. So join us again immediately after this commercial break, okay? We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're talking about the endocrine system, and we want to share how stress is so prevalent in all walks of life, and how it, first of all, the adrenals, right?
Absolutely.
The adrenals.
Yeah.
We have so many people that are on adrenal burnout, which is the backup to the endocrine system.
It is.
So explain how this really affects people.
Well, you can tell by the amount of coffee shops on every corner that we're really having trouble getting our own innate energy. And what we're doing, unfortunately, and I love a cup of coffee myself, but we're using caffeine as a stimulant to push our bodies beyond what they're capable of. And that's kind of like working on your reserve tank. But once you deplete your reserve tank, then your body crashes. So for example, stresses, most people think, well, you know, I'm not that stressed out, I'm retired. Well, it's not just the financial stresses of going to work. There's psychological stresses. There's traumas throughout our lifetime that maybe we haven't dealt with, and you're a specialist in that. So I'm sure you've seen many people carry this around for decades. There's traumatic experiences. There's the electromagnetic frequencies that are around us. We are surrounded by electronics today, whether they be routers or cell phones and EMFs and electromagnetic frequencies. There is infectious stresses. It is stress on the body when we have low-grade infections in our intestines. And most people today have a vague sense of discomfort in their digestive system, gas, bloating, something's not sitting right. Many times it's low-grade, we call it dysbiosis, abnormal bacteria levels. Normally we have 85% good bacteria in the intestines and 15% bad. Today we flipped it around.
Yes.
And that's a very big stress on the body. The other one you mentioned earlier, genetically modified foods.
Oh, big one.
This is a recent Harvard study.
Chemicals.
Yes.
Chemicals.
And what was most interesting when I read this is recently Harvard researchers found, after hundreds of independent studies, mind you, that it's the BT virus. It's basically a bacteria in the corn, which is one of the major genetically modified foods we have in our food supply, is responsible for altering the gut bacteria that leads to colitis, inflammatory bowel diseases. In fact, they went on to say that the cows that were fed exclusively genetically modified corn were dead between 140 to 160 days unless they were slaughtered sooner. And
oh my God! I knew it was bad. I didn't realize it was that bad.
This is the most recent information coming out of Harvard research, and I was totally surprised that it would have that big effect, because you know we surmise and we don't know until long-term studies come around.
Right.
But here we are, genetically modified corn, genetically modified wheat. What most people don't realize is 80% of the grocery store is genetically modified at some level because of the multi-ingredients, whether it be canola or soy or wheat. And the problem is that we don't know until it's too late. The last stress I'd like to mention is xenobiotics. And xenobiotics is a funny word, but it's basically environmental chemicals. And we, since the 1940s, have been exposed to so many chemicals, and they're bioaccumulative. It means that low-dose exposure won't really do much to us, but as the years go by, it builds up into our bodies to toxic levels and causes chaos. Much like, for example, with a rat or a mouse would be into your electrical in your house, eventually it would short circuit the whole house. And these are all the stresses that go into our body from our hypothalamus to our pituitary, through our nervous system down to our adrenals, and it raises a stress hormone called cortisol. And we have epidemics of elevated cortisol today.
Right.
And that right there inhibits your thyroid from functioning because it increases something called reverse T3. And T4 has to be converted to T3. And if you cut that and you can't convert to T3, your thyroid can't function. So all these stresses, psychological, emotional, traumatic, dysbiosis, xenobiotic, they all have to be taken into consideration. And I think it's come a time in our healthcare system where we have to start asking ourselves, what are the root causes? And we can't any longer just put a little patch on it and hope it goes away.
Right. One of the things I find interesting is I do evoke potential biofeedback.
Yes.
And one of the things I have found interesting over the years is how much food poisoning has affected people.
Yes.
Because food poisoning does not leave your system on its own. Your immune system starts fighting. It brings the counts down, brings the counts down. Where I can go in and we call zapping it, putting the frequency back into the body to neutralize what's going on. But you'd be surprised how many people walking through my door for biofeedback have food poisoning and are not aware, because we often eat food that's on the verge of going bad and we don't realize it's on the verge. It was interesting, when I was taking the course out in Vancouver, I was out there for 10 days and there was 24 in our class, and every time we turned on our computer, someone in our classroom had food poisoning from eating in a restaurant.
My.
What does that tell you?
Yes, absolutely.
You know, so there's so many stressors out there, and hidden ones that many people don't even recognize are going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
So, wow. I knew some of this. The other thing I wanted to stress, because I know more and more people are not having bowel movements properly. How many should you have a day?
Well, at least 1 to 2. If you're eating 3 meals a day, 1 to 2 would be the norm. And it's not just having a bowel movement every day, are you eliminating quickly enough? So we should have a gastric emptying time about 18 to 24 hours. So if it goes into your mouth, it should come out of your body within 24 hours. And we have found that, for example, the average Englishman has a bowel transit time of 60 hours. And that's 3 times longer than it should be. And what happens is that food sits in our intestines, and it's very dark, very warm in there, 97 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's a putrefactive breeding ground for all kinds of poisons. In fact, many individuals have found a lot of mental problems that are associated with bowel toxins. Most notably, it was almost 100 years ago. Their names were Satterley and Eldridge, and they associated 518 cases of mental symptoms to bowel toxicity.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me in the least, because I'm seeing a lot of it as well. That's why I brought it up, because I knew that you would put a title to it. Yes, these are all factors that affect us.
Absolutely.
So, where do we go from here?
Well, as I mentioned, I think the first thing is try to not to overwhelm yourself, because there are all these factors. Even therapists and practitioners become overwhelmed sometimes because we've created such a foreign world to live with. We see many different organisms that are having a hard time surviving. We see fish that are dying, we see bees that are disappearing, we see birds that are disappearing, we see salmon runs that aren't happening in the rivers, and we're looking around and saying, well, what's causing this? And I think we need to come together to turn the clock back. Technology has been wonderful for all of us, and I'm sure we all enjoy our cell phones and power steering in our cars and all the other wonderful things that have come over the past several decades. But if we don't step back and go back to the earth, the planet's going to have a very hard time surviving, and we are in one biosphere. And the whales, the bees, the birds, the fish, and humans all live in the same planet. And unless we start going back to the earth, to the soil, clean food, clean air, clean water, we're going to have a very hard time surviving.
I agree. I see we've got another caller on the line. We have Denise from Hamilton. Hi, Denise. How are you tonight?
Hi, good, thank you. How are you?
Good. What can we do for you, love?
Oh, I got my daughter, Krista. Hi, Krista. She's in Oshawa or Bowmanville, and she asked me to listen into your show. I have thyroid issues.
Yes.
So she was all, concerned about it. So, and I just heard the last little bit that the doctor was talking about, where if you are on medication, that you're supposed to look into what the cause is.
Yes.
And how do you do that? If your doctor has prescribed you this medication and then off you go, and you're taking it, for, like I was taking it for 2 years now, and all of a sudden something has changed.
Okay.
And now
hang on. Let Darko answer you. Go ahead, Darko. Explain to her.
Well, I think obviously going to your doctor, doing the appropriate blood work, but unfortunately, the blood work doesn't always reflect. We have evidence that says that up to 70% of the individuals out there are suffering from subclinical hypothyroidism to some level.
Right.
And this was first brought forth in 1976 when a gentleman named Dr. Broda Barnes wrote a book, Hypothyroidism, the Unsuspected Illness. And he gave us a way of figuring out whether our thyroid was functioning properly. And you can do this at home. We'll tell you about that in a little bit. But you want to, first of all, stay on your medication, keep doing your blood work, get to a practitioner. When an individual comes to my office and they say, listen, I've been on this thyroid medication for a number of years and my symptoms are under control, but I don't feel vitality and I don't feel energetic and I would really want to. So first thing we do is we take a look again what medications, your primary concern, your contributing factor, your family history. We go through the symptomology of the body. Do you have gas? Do you have bloating? Do you have heartburn? Do you have constipation? And take a look at what are these symptoms saying? What do you eat? What do you drink? How much do you sleep? Take a look at the history of the person and then put together a program for strengthening that gland. So you stay on your medication as you build up the nutrients. And as you get stronger, the need for medications comes down.
Right.
Because the medication is just a crutch. And if you have a broken leg, you have to keep that crutch until the leg is healed.
Right.
Right.
But to heal that leg, you're going to need adequate amounts of calcium and phosphorus and vitamin D. And in this case, you'll need things like zinc and iodine and tyrosine and selenium and other nutrients which are critically important for healthy thyroid function.
Okay.
Does that help out a little bit?
It does, but where do I go to speak to a person that would...
Well, you're in the Hamilton area, so do you not have some practitioners that deal with natural health in the area?
Okay, yep, there is one actually on Barton, yep.
Okay, well, that's where you start. You want to go to someone who deals with the whole body. That's why we call it holistic health.
Absolutely. And, for the viewers at home, if they find themselves confused, we always encourage them to call the office or go to our website to contact us at biosishealthcare.com. And you can give us a call. We can answer your questions. We have a referral program to various practitioners throughout the city that are like-minded, who are doing complementary medicine. We have a lot of physicians as well who are working with us, and it's really great because they do the part that we don't do and we do the part that they don't do, and together we make a very effective team. And the bottom line is human beings happy, healthy, and well.
Right.
Thank you.
So if you go to my website, if you go to the Alva Folks website at Rogers, I have all of my guests listed on there and Darko's information, along with Bio's website and phone number and information, how to contact him is all on there, dear.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for calling in.
Okay,
Good
bye.
question.
Yeah,
Good question, because
Great
people
questions.
need to know where to go.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. Well, when you're suffering, you just want a solution. We all want to be healthy. We all want to be well. And I believe that's our birthright, to be happy, to be healthy, so that we can enjoy this journey called life.
Absolutely.
Yes.
If you don't have health, you don't have wealth.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to have to go to commercial break again in a minute. Is there anyone out there that wants to call in about the endocrine system or some issues you may be having? We got here on the camera. So if there's something that you'd like to know about, please call in and ask, and we will be delighted to have Darko answer for you. And we'll be right back after this commercial break. We are talking about the endocrine system. And when we come back from this break, we're going to talk about what you can do to get it back on track. So join us again right after this commercial break. And I hope you're staying with us and you haven't been cut out of camera. Be right back. Oh, that's the second time. That's the second time this year I've had that happen.
Really?
About the endocrine system and in particular the thyroid and all of the issues surrounding it, especially the stress and all of the things that can cause some of the issues. And now we'd like to talk a little bit about how we can correct some of these issues. Okay, so you were talking about a book that's been written in regards to this.
Yeah, it's called Hypothyroidism, the Unsuspected Illness. It was written by a medical doctor, Dr. Broda Barnes, in 1976, and he showed us that we can find out whether our thyroid is functioning properly, subclinically or otherwise, by something as simple as taking a thermometer and put it underneath your armpit. It's called the basal temperature test to find your basal metabolic rate. And it's as simple as taking a thermometer, and preferably the old analog ones over the digital, shake it down the night before, put it on your bedside, and in the morning, as soon as you wake up, you put it underneath your arm, hold it there for a few minutes to get an accurate reading, and jot down your numbers. For postmenopausal women or men, you can do this any time of the month. For women, it's optimal on the second, third, and fourth day of their cycle. That way we can find what's your basal metabolic rate. It's kind of like what's your thermostat set at.
Right.
And it should be between 97.8 and 98.2. It's a very narrow range. And if it's there, we're normal. If it's above 98.2, barring any infections that they might be going through, that's an overactive thyroid.
Right.
So most individuals are low.
Right.
And if we can find out how low you are, we can put the appropriate nutrients forward, which we'll talk about in a minute. But again, the conventional treatment in the short term, doing your TSH, T4, T3, there could be autoimmune component to the thyroid as well, where they want to do some tests to see if there's antibodies to your thyroid. You want to find out what you're doing first, get a copy of all your tests, and then bring it to your practitioner. We can take a look at the big picture. In the short term, beyond the medications, T4, synthroid level thyroxine, to hold the symptoms back. In the long term, get the right nutrients. So as we mentioned earlier, in addition to the environmental toxins, and we're going to try to clean up our homes, hopefully, try to find more eco-friendly things for our kitchen, for cookware.
Vinegar.
Vinegar, baking soda. Yeah, well, these things have been around for a year or two. I think today we're getting too dependent on these cleaning chemicals. And for example, you clean your floor with these items, and then the dog or the cat or your little one goes across the floor, and the dog might lick their paws. Now they're ingesting it. Little babies might be putting their hands in their mouth, ingesting that as well. So try to clean up the environment a little bit. Use cleaner cleaning chemicals. Use vinegar, hot water, baking soda. Take a look at what's under your sink in your bathroom. There's a lot of makeup, personal care products that contain parabens and aluminum and other chemicals that are not very healthy for our thyroid as well. Again, you go to your local health food store, there's a multitude of products out there, shampoos, soaps, deodorant, personal care products that are much safer for us. And then once we've done that with our household, then we start looking at what we need for our body and our endocrine system. Get healthy levels of the right nutrients. Your thyroid, critically dependent upon vitamin A and D and selenium, as we mentioned. For thyroid cell metabolism, there's iodine, there's selenium, there's zinc, there's vitamin D. Actually, your T4, thyroxine, is one molecule of tyrosine, which is an amino acid, and one molecule of iodine, which comes from the ocean. Many people probably are familiar with kelp for example, floats on the top of the ocean. Very good source of iodine. There's other herbs like bladderwrack that have been shown in clinical studies to help support thyroid function as well. Iodized salt, it might have been a good idea back in the 1930s, but I don't think it's such a good idea today.
I don't think it's real anymore.
No, I don't think so. These are chemically processed products, and we want to go back to nature. We have something called dulse flakes at the health food store, which is little flakes of dulse seaweed, and you can sprinkle it into salads, you can sprinkle it into your beans, put it into your food, put it into your soup. It provides you not only iodine, but many trace elements. The ocean water is almost identical to what we're made up of in terms of mineral content, and it's pretty ironic that 2/3 of the earth is made out of water, 2/3 of our body is made out of water. The mineral elements from the soil and from the ocean are identical to what we have in our bodies. So we are directly connected to our soil, our water, our earth, our air. And if we can just come back to that to start to get some of those nutrients. There's a lot of technical things that we can go into. So for example, nuclear binding of T3 inside our cells is dependent upon vitamin A. We need antioxidants to keep them from falling apart and converting into undesirable things. There's amino acids like L-tyrosine that are necessary for the making of that hormone. There's B vitamins. One is specifically B6. B6 is critically important for the conversion of amino acids and the making of these thyroid hormones. So if you can imagine, there's a little factory inside your thyroid, and there's all these little guys working in there trying to make T4 and T3, and they're saying, well, I need some parts. Give me vitamin A, give me vitamin D. Where's my tyrosine? I ordered iodine weeks ago. Where is it? So if we were to have all these nutrients, our body knows exactly what to do with it. Unfortunately today, our soils don't have the nutrients. Our environment has a lot of pesticides, chemicals, environmental toxins. The stress in our fast-paced society in the city, all these things are contributing factors that are building up and bringing our thyroid down, leading to these, what we call diseases. But as you and I well know, they're not diseases. They are symptoms of cellular dysfunction. And yes, a medication in the short term perhaps, but as you mentioned, each medication has many, many, many side effects. And there was an old physician over 100 years ago, his name was Sir William Osler. He says the person who takes medication must recover twice. First from the original ailment and then from the medication. So
how true.
So some wisdom from well over 100 years ago, Sir William Osler.
Very good, very good. I see, we'll carry on here in just 1 minute. We have one more caller here. We have Shirley on the line. Hi, Shirley. How are you?
I'm just fine, thank you.
Good. What would you like to ask Darko, dear?
Okay, I have low thyroid, so I'm on altroxin, but years ago I was diagnosed with hyperparathyroidism, and I don't hear much about that.
Okay.
The doctor said that not to take calcium because it goes through the kidneys.
Yeah. The parathyroid is intimately involved in the metabolism of calcium and phosphorus, so you really want to be careful with that. Again, is this a disease or is this a symptom? This is most likely a symptom that something's not right in the body. Just like, for example, if you're driving down the highway and you see that red light come on your dashboard, check engine, it's not that red light that's the problem. It's indicating that something in the engine is not functioning properly, and we need to investigate what it is. So I would be hesitant to recommend anything to anybody without knowing the details, because of course our ultimate goal is to, above all, do no harm, as Hippocrates once said.
So if you go to his website, Shirley, he has a list of people that work with him who he can recommend in the area. She's from Oshawa. You can check out his website via my Rogers website, and you can find out through his through the business. If you call the office, he can tell you where to go and get some help in this vicinity as well. Okay, dear?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for calling in.
Okay, bye-bye.
It's interesting, you know, because I believe that where we're going with our medicines is about being in charge, being aware when you've got a small symptom that something's starting to go wrong, and we have to find our own answers and find the practitioner that's going to help us move forward. So we're getting close to the end here. What do you recommend, and how do you suggest people recognize some of the symptoms and where to start their healing process? we've cut a synopsis of what we were doing, Darko.
Well, you know, as always, and there's many old adages, a stitch in time will save nine, an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. Along the same lines, I think if the symptom comes up in your body, and of course, you know, if you have a headache one day and it doesn't come along for 4 or 5 months, I think you're okay. We all have occasionally little things that happen. Right. But if something is persistently telling you something, if your body is cold, if you're sluggish, your hair is falling out, if your cycle is off, or you're having trouble with fertility or whatnot, what is your body trying to say to you? Find someone who can interpret these signs.
Right.
And follow a treatment protocol that will strengthen the body, because there's only two real reasons for disease in this world, for the most part: nutritional deficiencies and internal toxicities. And there has been worldwide consensus, and some of the greatest people in medicine, in the history of medicine, Sir Arbuthnot Lane in the 1850s, he was a physician to the British royal family, if you can imagine that, so I'm pretty sure they have some of the best physicians for them. He said, and he spent the last 25 years of his practice not doing surgeries, but teaching people good nutrition. He says all diseases are due to lack of vitamins, minerals, and protective flora. Other individuals, Nobel Peace Prize winner Dr. Alexis Carrel, worked for Rockefeller Medical Center back in 1912. They did studies on the cell. For as long as they provided nutrients to the cell and took away the waste, the cell kept living. And it lived for 29 years in this fashion, and it died one day when the lab assistant neglected to give it the clean nutrient solution. So we've known this for well over 100 years. It's some of the greatest men in history of medicine have shown us this through clinical studies, and I think it's time that we go back and we start heeding some of this wisdom of the past.
I totally agree. So, that's our show for tonight. My guest has been Darko. I hope we've not only entertained you, but we've educated you on some of the things that you need to be aware of, that we all need to be in charge of our own health and watch for small symptoms and then get back on track. Watching nutrition, watching what you're eating, getting organic foods in your daily diet are going to make all the difference to you. And as you can see, our time has changed. We're on Tuesday nights live from 8 till 9 o'clock. And I hope you join us again next week when we come back, and we'll be doing more information to help you have a healthier life, to help you move forward. Please join us again. Thank you, Darko, for joining us.
Thank you.
Join us again next week for Alva.